This is another edition of the People's Court. I'm Chris, joined as always by my brother Lamont. And as always, you can hit us up on Twitter at People's Court FM. Check us out on our blog, actb://thepeoplescourt.fm. Today, Lamont and I want to discuss who's going to be in the playoffs and who's going to be out. More specifically, which teams made the playoffs last year that won't make them this year, and who's going to take their place. Lamont and I both have our lists together, so we'll jump right in. Let me hit you with my list first. And Lamont, let's see what you think about my list. And let's start with the Eastern Conference, because I think this is pretty obvious who's going to be in.
Obvious.
The Cleveland Cavaliers. Super obvious that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to make the playoffs this year. They added LeBron James, Kevin Love, new coach David Blatt. Even though they got off to a slow start, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. There's no chance this team misses the playoffs again.
Well, we said it last episode. They are one of the teams that matter, so of course they're going to be in.
That's right. If you missed it, we'll put a little link down here. One of the teams that matter, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, of course, I mean, they're not going to be in the playoffs, but they're going to challenge for the championship. And whose place they're going to take? I got to go with the Pacers. Without Paul George, without Lance Stevenson, and George Hill's on the mend for a few weeks here at the beginning of the season as well, I don't think they have enough to get back to the playoffs, Lamont.
I'm gonna have to agree. They basically replaced now 60%. Their starting lineup is now 60% different than it was a year ago. And, their defense is probably still going to be good, but their offense was abysmal the second half of last season, and they of course lost their two most potent offensive weapons or playmakers from a year ago. And now George Hill is out for however many weeks he's out for. Yeah. They're gonna miss the playoffs. I think they're gonna miss the playoffs.
Initially, I had this as one of several teams that could miss the playoffs that actually made it last year. But I think the Pacers just have too much to overcome. The way they ended the season last year, barely getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, even though everybody thought that they were shoo-in, to even get to the finals. People thought initially they had a chance to beat the Heat, but the way they closed the season and then played throughout the playoffs, they showed that they weren't quite ready for that yet. And then Paul George, maybe he have a speedy recovery, but he's going to miss the entire season. And without him, their offense is going to struggle even more mightily than normal. And then no Lance Stevenson. Sure, they replaced those guys, with C.J. Miles and Rodney Stuckey. But, I mean, you go from an all-star set of wing players to a couple of guys that shouldn't even be starting on most teams. They're going to miss the playoffs.
Definitely.
And let's move on to the Western Conference for myself. I got to go with the Phoenix Suns because they just barely missed the playoffs last year. They lost Channing Frye, but they added Isaiah Thomas, and he's off to gangbuster start, scoring 20 points off the bench in each of the Phoenix Suns' first two games. I think that they're in. And out, sad to say, man, I got to go with Oklahoma City because not only do they have to deal with the absence of Kevin Durant for an extended period, we just found out Russell Westbrook fractured a finger and he's going to miss at least 4 weeks as well. And without those two guys, the Thunder are going to find themselves so far behind that when those guys finally get back, the amount of ground that they'll have to make up is just going to be too much to overcome. And at that point, it's going to be too late, and they're going to miss the playoffs. It's sad to say this has been a team that's been to the Western Conference Finals 3 out of the last 4 seasons. I'm sure this team had high hopes to make it back to the Western Conference Finals and potentially into the finals this year. But without their 2 stars, and a bunch of role players are out too, guys like Reggie Jackson, Jeremy Lamb, Anthony Morrow, those guys are all out too. Without a full complement of players in the deep and loaded West, they're not going to make the playoffs. Sad to say.
Yeah, you figure, I forget off the top of my head what Durant's timetable for return is from his broken foot, but Westbrook's timetable is, I think, last night is about a month. You figure most teams play about 15 games per month, depending on the length of the month and how many games are in there. But if you can't go anywhere near 500 for a given month in the, like you said, the loaded Western Conference, they're just gonna have too much ground to wake up by the time those their two otherworldly players return. It'll be just too deep of a hole to dig out of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how tough their schedule is during Westbrook's scheduled absence, but I mean, even best case scenario, say they go, they have a 300 winning percentage. They've won 1 in 3 games. That puts them at something like 3-12 at the end of a month. That's a big hole to dig yourself out of in the Western Conference. 9 games back.
Yeah, real quick. I'm looking at their schedule right now. Their next 5 games are against Denver, a back-to-back in Brooklyn and Toronto, followed by playing Memphis and Sacramento at home.
Yeah, I mean, how many of those games are winnable? Maybe that Sacramento game is the only winnable game that you just listed out of what, 6 games?
Right, and Denver's probably right. Absence Durant and Westbrook, Denver's probably got a roster that's just a little bit more talented than the Thunder do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Perry Jones, in the game that Westbrook got hurt, Perry Jones went off for 30-something points. You can't count on that production on a nightly basis. He's not Kevin Durant. So Perry Jones had to do that for them to kind of keep pace with the Clippers. Russell Westbrook had to go off for 36 points in 3 quarters or something like that for them to keep pace with the Trailblazers in the opener. And then the Blazers just blew them out, in the fourth quarter. They're going to have a tough road ahead. And unfortunately, it's going to be too much. The West is too deep. Oklahoma City's out. Phoenix is in. All right, Lamont, let's take a look at who you got.
Well, my list is similar to yours. The only difference between your list and mine is I have added the Detroit Pistons as a team that I think is in the playoffs. I think they have some talent on the roster. They're gonna get they have one of the 5 or 6 best head coaches in the league. Stan Van Gundy is you already see that he's already playing Brandon Jennings a little bit less. I think he's gonna find a way to figure out that three big man trio of Andre Drummond, Greg Monroe, and Josh Smith. I think either Monroe or Josh Smith. Probably Josh Smith is gone sometime midseason, so that'll work itself out. I just think I'm taking a flyer on them making them playoffs. I'm going for bold. I think Detroit can make the playoffs this season.
Yeah, I mean, you went for bold already in your teams that matter by picking the Warriors over the Spurs.
I sure did.
Stick with the theme here. Go bold.
I sure did. They'll be replacing the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. Okay.
Brooklyn a year ago got off to an abysmal start, and if they weren't playing they were able to recover well enough to get into the playoffs last season, but I don't think they could make the playoffs again this season. Gone is Paul Pierce, gone is Sean Livingston, gone is Andre Blatch, and their best lineups from a season ago included at least 2 of those 3. Kevin Garnett is probably only going to give you 16 productive minutes per night. He's just old now. Of all the old guys that are still in the league, he's the oldest. He's looking the oldest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, other than Steve Nash, but.
Well, yeah. Steve Nash is unfortunately no longer still in the NBA. And Brook Lopez is out again.
You don't say. I'm surprised.
Yeah. I mean, it was news breaking. It was groundbreaking. It's not like something, It's not like this is something that happens every other Tuesday. But he's He's out again. And so now you're left. Now you're left to see what Joe Johnson and Darren Williams can do. They have some talent, but it's just not gonna be enough. They also have a new coach with that which Lionel Hollins is a good coach, but still, I don't think they have enough to make the playoffs. Even in a supposedly weak Eastern Conference, I don't think they have enough to get in there.
Yeah, I think those are bold picks, but at the same time, there's a very good likelihood that the Nets miss the playoffs, and somebody's got to take their place. It may as well be the Pistons.
Yeah, unless Jared Jack can do something.
Well, there you have it. Those are our who's in and who's out for 2014 and 15. We agreed pretty much the whole way. Lamont's got two additional teams, but just to do a quick reminder, here's Lamont's who's in and who's out. He's got Cleveland Cavaliers, Detroit Pistons in the East, and the Pacers and Nets out in the West. We both have the Phoenix Suns in, replacing the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, be sure to check us out on Twitter, People's Court FM, on our blog, actb://thepeoplescourt.fm. Until next time.